Hello, welcome back to PPE for the Mind. Sadly, this is the last episode that we'll be doing. Today is a very important component. It's about treating yourself well. So there's plenty of policies about bullying in the workplace, but actually we don't often reflect on the place where most bullying happens, which is in our own heads towards ourselves. So shall we start with our usual anchor? Shall we just take a pod? Assume position. Close your eyes. So just pause and push your feet down and just notice. Notice your breathing. Notice you're here in this chair. Just observe your mind. What's on your mind right now? Is it busy, rushing about, or is it calm? And then just notice your body. Notice any areas of physical discomfort. What would your emotions be telling you today? Or maybe there's no obvious emotional feelings. Just notice the absence of feelings in this moment. And then come back to the room and decide what's important. So connect with your body. Just kind of notice anything you can hear. Take a couple of breaths. And we're ready to go. We're just going to do a short exercise to think about the way we treat ourselves. You've probably noticed by now, because I keep pointing it out, that our minds are often quite negative in their content. And they often throw up a lot of quite bullying comments. My mind is a lot like that. I'd really like a cheerleading kind of mind, so that when I woke up, my mind said, yay, get up, Joe, go, you're a total hero. You got all the energy you need. You've totally got this day. Everyone's going to respect you wherever you go and listen to your sentiments. Often my mind starts the day with another dreadful day. You're totally going to screw this up. Other people will probably judge you negatively. What on earth were you thinking taking this project on? So I kind of wondered whether you could think about the last time a friend or your partner came to you when they were struggling. I wonder, when you look at this slide, this is a Are You a Good Friend personality test slide. When you look at these things that are up there, work out how many of these things you did to your friend when she or he was distressed. So did you laugh at their misery? Did you call them names? Say, shut up, you're so boring and stupid, I've heard this so many times. Did you give them a blade and suggest they went away and cut themselves? Did you force them into bed and say that they weren't allowed to make any social contact? Did you make them work just a little bit harder? Did you feed them some junk food until they felt like throwing up? How many of these 7 things did you do? So when we look at these results, where would you score yourself?
I think you want to know me.
Yeah, definitely a 0. There's anything on there that I can think I've done recently.
So you're a good friend to other people. I wonder whether you're the same level of good friend to yourself, particularly when you're hurting, or when you've had a bad day, or when you've screwed up and you're your least good version. What kind of tone of voice do you bring to that? How do you behave to yourself?
It can be quite critical.
When you're kind of looking at yourself critically, what kind of things does your mind say?
Well, it's more, you shouldn't have done this. You could have handled that better. Next time, don't do this again.
Yeah, definitely. How about you, Gemma? What kind of friend are you when you're suffering to yourself?
There's some things on the other page that I was genuinely like, I would never do that to someone else. But some stuff like overeating, staying in bed, not talking to people, things like that, I definitely do to myself.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? And I think we do that naturally, that we're often a much less good friend to ourselves. And some of these tools that we've been talking about, we have to be careful. And often in that 4-lens matrix, which I often put an eye, a physical eye, and I suggest that what we're aiming to do with our increased self-awareness and our increased noticing is to observe ourselves kindly. And yet what we know is that people who are able to show themselves compassion are actually much more able to cope with life and find life easier. Have you noticed that when you fly on an aeroplane, usually the air hostess talks you through the safety card? And one of the things they say on there is if there's a problem, then you need to first give the oxygen mask to yourself and don't attempt to help anybody else, particularly children, until your own oxygen is flowing. On first glance, when I first heard that, that seems very strange, because what we most want to do is to save other people. But actually, if we don't first save ourselves and care for ourselves, then we have no resources to care for other people. And I just wonder if you can start to notice that when you're hurting, upset, frightened, screwed up, whether you can just notice what kind of mate you are to yourself. Because I wonder what the impact would be if actually when your friend next called round in floods of tears or phoned you up, how do you think that would be for them if you slammed the door in their face or said, you're such an idiot, why do you keep doing this? Or shoved some vodka and some chocolate at them and told them not to come back until they'd eaten it all. What do you think the impact would be on them?
Now I'm feeling like a bad friend for giving them vodka when they're upset.
Sometimes that's necessary.
Yeah, maybe sometimes it is, isn't it?
But not when it's not, if you know what I mean. Like, I would never treat someone else the way I kind of treat myself sometimes. Definitely not.
And I wonder if you could at least notice that. Notice the next time that you're upset or struggling or overwhelmed or full of fatigue. What kind of things would you say to a friend?
See you later, go for a rest.
Yeah, that's nice. Kind of really permission giving.
I probably say things like, you don't have to do everything. Look at all the things you do and you do really well. Because I think if I was a friend, and I was in a bad place, I think I'd be concentrating on all the negative things and not all the positive things. So I, as a friend to them, would say to them, let's talk about some of the positives, just to remind you.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we get hijacked, we tend to kind of zoom in. How could I be so stupid? That thing, I do everything wrong. This always happens. Why are you such an idiot? But yeah, kind of, and I think that's something that hopefully some of the tools that we've experimented with will give you an ability to stand back, like you might do to a friend and say, can you look with me at the bigger picture? Another thing that some of my colleagues encourage, and I do much less, is to put a kind hand on yourself. So either on your chest or to wrap round you.
It's another way of kind of grounding yourself as well, isn't it? Instead of it.
Yeah.
There's like weighted blankets.
Yeah.
And they can be quite cocooning and they make you feel a lot more like they're really good for anxiety and things like that, because of that fact you feel kind of weighted. It's almost like having the weight of someone else if give you a hug.
That's a really good idea, actually. I've seen those. I haven't thought about that in that context. That's a nice thought. If you were being a friend to yourself when you're most overwhelmed, exhausted, had enough, hurting, I wonder what else you could suggest to yourself that you might do.
Probably would reach out to family more. I think I tend to withdraw when I'm like that and get into my own head. And sometimes what I actually need is just to reach out to someone and say, I'm struggling. And then they'll go, right, what can we do?
Nice. Okay, so ask for help. So I've thoroughly enjoyed doing PPE for the mind, but I was wondering how it's been for you guys.
I couldn't believe how powerful your slide was around saying the things that you would say to a friend and whether you would say that to yourself, being a friend to yourself. That is something that I hadn't even crossed my mind at all before, because you do have these quite negative thoughts in your own head. And then to try and sort of translate that to saying that to someone else, it's like you absolutely wouldn't say that to someone. That was really powerful for me.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I quite like the one that we did on the page where you write down your negative thought in the bottom left-hand corner, and the middle, the I am having that thought that, and then the I'm noticing that I'm having the thought that. That really, really does help, I think, just give me some space to around what I'm thinking. And I kind of wish I'd had that back when I was first diagnosed. Yeah, it'd be really, really useful.
So I'm sad to say that we're at the end of PPE for the mind. Thank you very much for tuning in. Don't forget, if you've only just come across this, you can go back to previous episodes. If you look up PPE for the mind, Shift.ms. So overall, what do we need to do? Well, PPE are skills. If we didn't put on our PPE for the body, then they wouldn't protect us. So we need to keep practicing these skills. Maybe before you tune out today, just jot down a few things that you've particularly enjoyed and make a commitment to practice those. But the 3 principles to remember are: stay in touch with your values, stay in touch with what and who is important, because we know that makes life feel more meaningful. Notice and name any thoughts and feelings. Become increasingly more aware of what's holding you back, what entangles you, and then make active commitments to do what's important despite the difficult thoughts and feelings.